Thanks for staying here on Joy News today. Apologies, we can't bring you entertainment news because we have to take you back to Parliament, where executives of the Bank of Ghana are responding to some questions at the Public Accounts Committee sitting today.
Sometimes, you know, oh, this is what is going for 10 cedis, the other is going to. So you make some projections or some, miscellaneous, that sort of thing. Why should that exceed the actual work that you are expected to do? If they can educate me and maybe some others who do not understand it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I want Peter to come in again. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I think we need to get a few issues clear here. Sundry is miscellaneous. And so you see that it's not one particular heading. That's why you see the citing of medical inspection, etc. And so where the items are said that you want to group them, and you put it under sundry. So this is just to show a trend. And so it's not as if there is a comparison as to whether it has performed better or not, but to show that these series of little expenditure, so to speak, have decreased or increased by a certain margin. So wherever we come across sundry, it means we are trying to do a classification and put very immaterial, relatively items together, so that we will not we'll give the headlines to give them a material amount. So, Mr. Chairman, I believe that this is not a justification one, but just to show trends.
Honourable Member, your time is up. It's up. I beg you. Your time is up. Honourable Aban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. My questions will bother more on economic policies of the bank. And for this reason, I would refer the bank to the Bank of Ghana Act 612, Section 3 of the Act, just to refresh our memory, and then I'll ask my question. The primary objective of the bank is to maintain stability in the general level of prices. And thereafter, and then without prejudice to subsection 1, the bank shall support the general economic policy of the government and promote economic growth and effective and efficient operation of the banking and credit systems in the country, independent of instructions from the government or any other authority. Then section 4 has a number of things that the Bank of Ghana does as its functions. With that as the background, let us just take the executive summary, which deals with the report in its totality. And now I ask my first question, that having regard to the core mandate of the Bank of Ghana, what is the effect, the economic effect of the inflows and the outflows that we get, and especially the net position that happens? What is the effect of that? And if it has any positive effect, what is the Bank of Ghana doing as a policy to sustain that policy, positive effect? And if it has negative effect, what is the Bank of Ghana doing to curtail the negative effect?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Okay, so we are talking about the receipts and payments regime of a country. As you are aware, Ghana is not an island. We deal with other countries. We deal with them in terms of trade. We deal with them in terms of investment. And these are the kind of transactions that explain what we are seeing here. Now, what I can confirm is that when you have a net positive position in terms of other countries, it is good for your country. Number one, it's good for your foreign exchange market. Number two, it's good for economic growth. And generally, it is good for economic prosperity. And so what we desire to see is to see that the net position is at least positive, an increase for that matter. If you look at the period under review, which is the first half of last year, you'll see that in spite of the fact that receipts went up, we were fortunate payments also came down. And so if you look on page 8, I guess, page 8, paragraph 13, it says, due to increases in receipts from cocoa and the fall in forex sales, capital and invisible payments, BOG's net position improved from a net deficit of 1.1 billion during the period under review to a net deficit of 393.89. So it was still a deficit during that period. However, the deficit sort of came down, which is still good. But ideally, you want to have a surplus position that is increasing. And that is what we are moving towards currently. Thank you.
Yes, let us look at table ES1, foreign exchange inflows and outflows. Sorry,
Table
page
what?
3. Page 3. Foreign exchange inflows and outflows that gives a summary or a trend analysis from 2014 to 2016. And it appears to me that that trend shows consistently that the outflows always exceeds the inflows, leading obviously to a negative net position. And having regard to the mandate, as I read, what positive steps is the bank taking to make sure that we cross over to the next level?
Okay, thank you again. Yes.
Governor, I don't think that should be your question. You deal with monetary policies.
Yes.
This government deal with fiscal policies.
That's true. But Mr. Chairman, there are still certain segments of our policy that will support
Of course.
The trade regime. If, for example, we keep the real exchange rate from, getting persistently misaligned, that should stimulate exports, which is good for trade, and you see it in terms of these numbers. Let me assure the honorable member that if we attain our mandate of price stability, that is also good to ensure that the exchange rate is not misaligned in real terms. So we observe all these. When the MPC is meeting, these are details that we review. These are data that we sort of assess in terms of the outlook, and hence a decision is made. So we are very much engaged in supporting government in this area.
Chairman, I want to seek your permission.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, I want to seek your permission to ask what I may describe as a public interest question, not necessarily from the report.
No. I
Very
don't
well.
know what that interest policy question is.
It was,
So I will not permit it.
okay, maybe...
Unless you tell me
Yes,
if it's something.
Yes, so let me
Not
seek your permission.
on air.
Very well.
Okay.
Okay, so in that case, I still have my 2 minutes outstanding.
Sure,
I'll come to
you have your 2 minutes.
Yes.
I'll credit your account with 2 minutes. Honorable Boa.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me take you to page 14 of the report, paragraph 26. Paragraph 26, Bank of Ghana projection for cocoa receipts. Yes. Paragraph 26, page 14. Bank of Ghana projection for cocoa receipts was 623,250,000 for the period under review, but actual receipts were 560,646,737, resulting in an unfavorable variance of 62.6 million. Mr. Chairman, I want to get an understanding of, or an explanation of why this unfavorable situation from the governor.
Okay, thank you. Let me again ask my staff to come in, and then I'll add to it.
Mr. Chairman, for cocoa, it's a price and quantity effect. What we normally do at the beginning of the year, before the year begins, we deal with cocoa board. So we have all projections, monthly projections for cocoa, and then we have an idea of the world market price. So what happens is that we do continuous review on all these things. So anytime there are variances, it's either price or it's the quantity, the volume that was exported. But then what happens is that we do all these things, and then at the end of the year, we have an idea of total projections for cocoa, and then we get actual projections. That also now comes to inform us on the subsequent year ahead of us what we need to put in the various projections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You need to educate me a little bit further, because if you go back to page 13, table 1, you have syndicated trade credit facility, and then you have cocoa. Because your financial literacy is higher than mine, spare me here. My understanding of cocoa here means cocoa beans and cocoa products. Is that the understanding that I have? So if you look at the variance, 2015, where you recorded 255,982,100, then you get to 2016, 235,646,737. That gave you a variance, a negative variance of 20,335,363.37. So I was just trying to mark it with the 10% unfavorable variance as per paragraph 26. That's just what I'm trying to reconcile, and I can't, it's beating my imagination. Can you educate us a little bit?
Mr. Chair, page 14, the cocoa beans and cocoa products. For June 2016, I think the total is 476,636. That is in tons. That is volume. So we need to, that is volume. What we are seeing there is 476,636 in volume, so it's in tons. So but what is
reduction here?
On page 13
value.
Is value. So
yes, but what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, the fact still remains that if you are talking of cocoa products, cocoa beans and cocoa products combined, cumulatively, on this in table 1, 20.3 million. Is it not in dollars here? Yes, then you come here, it's also in dollars. That's just what I was trying to reconcile, and I don't get my way clear. Sorry?
Mr. Chair, table 2 is quantity. That's what I just alluded to. There's no money.
It's not saying there is money, but what the paragraph 26 I read to you is money. Yes, the variance. So I was trying to, I thought it was this paragraph 1, table 1 was a rundown to the 26.
Mr. Chairman, I think going by the same logic, you realize that the cocoa production, so to speak, the products and the beans fell from 502 on table 2 on page 14. It fell from 502,124 to 476,636. And that is also reflected in the values on table 1, which shows that the amount realized came from 255,982 to 235,646. So there's some consistency between the two tables there, so to speak. So I don't know.
Honorable member, what they are saying is that there are two factors at play in the whole cocoa story. When tonnage changes, that is volumes, or when the international price moves. Now, the international price moves daily, all right? So it's possible that you can have some decline in tons, you know, and yet if price effect is so huge, you know, then when you are comparing it to the period before, you may see an increase in value, and vice versa. So that's the message. If it's not driven by volume, you know, movements, then we look at the price movements, you know, to explain it. I'm not sure if you have any further issues with our answers.
I have no option but to take what you've just given us. Mr. Chairman, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Aban is not in, so Honorable Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the interaction here, I want to ask whether management of Bank of Ghana do take active part in the reports, in the presentation. Because what I know is that if auditors come to our organization, before they commence, there's an entry conference, and when they finish, there's an exit conference where the reports are discussed. I want to find out from management whether they actually take part in those meetings and discuss the reports with the auditors before it is presented to us.
Well, thank you, Honorable Member. Let me assure you that we take this exercise very, very, very seriously. Now, the head of our internal audit is the one that liaises directly with the Auditor General's team in doing this exercise. Now, as you said, upon completion, there has to be an exit meeting, and they know that we are very much interested in that meeting as well. However, it's possible that at the time they are holding that meeting, probably the governor is not available. But then we have other members of other management committee members who are also able to sit in. And then if there are any further issues, we pick those up. But I'll ask my head of internal audits to maybe say some few words about how those meetings were held in the past. But let me assure you that going forward, Mr. Chairman, I will personally ensure that I'm part of those exit meetings. It's something I wanted to discuss with the Auditor General. We need to collaborate more closely on these going forward. So rest assured, we will be part of those processes going forward. But I need the internal auditor to say a few words about this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there is one thing we need to put in context here. What the Bank of Ghana does is to compile the foreign exchange receipts and payments in its statistical form. Then the audit service validates the accuracy or otherwise of the statements. Beyond that, what the audit service does is to try to create some interpretation around and to put some trends around it. And that is not the document that we actually discussed at the exit conference. What we discuss is the accuracy of the figures we've put together. So maybe from what we are all learning here, in future, it means that this document must be owned by the two of us, and which means that we must sit together and agree to the fact that we must agree to whatever they have put down. What they do is they finish and give it to us and say if we have. And our interest is in the accuracy of the figures. And so with this, and the management issues that they raise are the ones. So with this coming up, what it means is that they cannot independently bring this one here. And then that is why your observation is actually right, because you have to explain things that we didn't prepare or that we didn't have direct. We didn't put the interpretations around it. So it's a good lesson that we all have to learn. But we give the raw statistics to them, and that is, they are here, they can testify to that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to follow up by asking the Deputy Governor. So, if the report, do you respond to the issues raised by the Auditor General and give them copy?
The management issues we do. That is why you see that when you read the management report side, they will tell you what we said. Which page is that? You look at the management, 46. 36, yes. You see that on the management issue side, when they have finished their narrative, you see that we recommended to management and so and the management agreed. So you see that this is the part where we actually get our voices heard. And beyond that, the other data is very interpretative, etc. So yes, we do, but it has to do with where they have raised management issues. And that's why we are saying that maybe going forward, we may have to go beyond the management issues, and we really also, become part of the trend analysis and the interpretations.
Mr. Chairman, I'm saying this because if you look at the wide variances in the reports, in almost every narrative that they are giving, you find out that the variances are huge and they keep on occurring. And from the interaction that we're having here, the Deputy Governor was telling us that those figures were coming from the auditors. And that's why I'm asking whether they do confer. Because if you confer with the auditors and then at least you agreed on the figures, I think we don't think we'll come here and then we'll be having this sort of issues. So I would like to have the assurances of the Deputy Governor or management that in future maybe we will not see such things here, and then you come here and then there will be some like disputing the report of the AG, a banter between management and then the AG.
Mr. Chairman, we can give you that assurance 100%. The head of internal audit made a statement that somehow we should take joint ownership of what comes before you. And I think that is the way we must go. Because some of the issues, they tend to evolve even after they complete their exercise. But if we get to see some of the issues after it's been presented to you, we'll continue to see the situation. So going forward, we just have to be more engaged together, and they are here. And believe me, we take the exercise very seriously. So the situation should improve as we go ahead.
Honorable Member, are you done? Because you have 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, let me wind up by saying that from the report, if you look at paragraph 66, it means management agreed with the recommendation of the auditors that steps have been taken to include, the second. So, but from what I'm seeing, it's like whenever there's these issues, it is left with the internal auditor, and the topmost management don't take part in the deliberations with the auditor before the final report is published. And so I would wish, or I would like the assurances from the Deputy Governor, who's a top management personnel, that in future management would take part.
Mr. Chairman, please, I think that these are very serious statements we are making here. And I don't want us to get away with the impression that management does not take these exercises seriously. That is not the case. There is a board in place. There are subcommittees that deal with these issues. The structures are there. Probably the day where they met with them on the exit meeting, that can be explained. I will not be surprised that probably there was something else that day. But that said, we get briefings on what is going on. You spoke about the variances. We have to take them case by case. Let's not generalize them. Let's not just look at the report and say that we are seeing big variances. No, each of them has an explanation. As I told you, the capital receipts you see that big variance there. But it was because the Eurobond thing kept going and going. It was never issued during the first half of last year. And so definitely you see that the actual versus the projection, and there will be some cases there. But what I'm assuring you about, Honorable Member, is that next time we appear before you, hopefully, we'll be working, collaborating more with our good friends. We shouldn't come here and be having to explain some very small details. We should be able to do those on our levels. We'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm done.
Thank you. Honorable Ales.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman.
Well,
Chairman.
Today I represented the Speaker, so if you call me Mr. Speaker, it's not bad.
Yeah. Yes. You can be called Mr. Speaker. Chairman, with your indulgence, I want us to have a look at the Bank of Ghana Act 612. And then point 3 there, we have objects of the central bank. The primary objective of the bank is to maintain stability in the general level of prices. 2, without prejudice to subsection 1, the bank shall support the general economic policy of the government and promote economic growth and effective and efficient operation of banking and credit systems in the country, independent of instructions from government or any other authority. So, Mr. Chairman, right from the onset, I want my Deputy Governor and the team to understand that the issue of the Auditor General presenting or the Statistical Service presenting their figures and validating here and there, it is neither here nor there. You have been given the responsibility to ensure that there is economic stability in collaboration with the government. And so, raw figures that you deal in validation is part of the process that will allow you to ensure these 2 objectives of the bank. Please, I want us to understand that, so that going forward, it's not like we get the figures, we have done our part, blah, blah, blah. And then going back to my question, Mr. Chairman, if I look at the profile of the deputy governor, the deputies, and then all the line managers, I can't see any deficiency in your competency, such that, Mr. Chairman, we will spend a whooping sum of 1,859,103.27 to fund managers of the central bank, foreign accounts, external accounts, etc. I want us to know, what is it at all that these fund managers are doing outside there that you can't do? That we are spending this kind of money every 6 months. That's my first question. I want an answer before I proceed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I think the first part of your question, just to emphasize it again, what we are saying is that even after the auditor finished their work, even after the exit meeting, all that is done, before they submit their report to this honorable committee, we should still work together. That's all that I'm saying. We should still work together and make sure whatever comes before your committee is really the very significant issues. You understand me? That's the point we are making. And he has heard it. We'll go back and work on that. Yes. As for why we would not manage all our investments on our own, but we'll be using external fund managers, I want Mr. Opata deals with them directly. I want him to come in here and provide some inputs.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to assure the honorable member that we do have competencies here, all right. But the issue is not just about competencies. It is about the practice of reserves management. I can share some surveys with you and so forth about how central banks manage their reserves. And throughout, even the biggest central banks do outsource part of their reserves management. And when they do so, it's not because they don't have the competencies, but to also get some other skill sets or some other areas that they think that there are other people who are better positioned to manage. As you started, you indicated that our core mandate is to what? Keep prices stable, and then after that, support the general economic level. So our core mandate is really not to manage investments here, but we do have investment assets on behalf of the state, and therefore we have to manage them. So in so doing, if you look at the size they are managing and the fees that they charge, what I think we have to do is to make sure that we negotiate these well so that we are getting return for money. But it's also important that we make sure that our activities are best in the state of line. That is why I think that we should outsource some of this. First, you are collaborating with what other central bankers are doing. It enables you to invest in some asset classes that sometimes it may be difficult to manage in Accra and so forth. So I don't intend to preach that to you, but to explain to you why I think there's a strong case to still outsource some of our reserves to external parties. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just to add that the petroleum funds that we have, the Heritage Fund and the other one, Stabilization Fund, those are being managed by ourselves. So it's not everything that is outsourced. We are managing some of them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up, I'm happy that they are saying that they want to learn. There are certain skills that they may not have, and that by asking these people to manage the fund, they learn like other practices elsewhere. But I think that we strongly have to look at the cost-benefit analysis. At the end of the day, 6 months, so much is being paid. Half year, what will go into the fund managers as against the interest that will be earned on the very investment that people are managing there. Let us critically look at this so that it doesn't become like, well, a developing country, this is the best practices elsewhere. Let us also do. And at the end of the day, critically, we are losing. If you look at the interest that we earn and then the payment that we made to these fund managers. So critically, I want us to look at this and at a management level, take a decision on it. But coming back, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable member, you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Yes.
Hey,
Mr. Chairman, maybe I should clarify, Honorable Member, the statement you made, I think we need to clarify it. It's not true that if you look at the interest income versus the commissions we pay, that it's adverse. It's not. There's no evidence to that effect. We get value for money. Remember, we petroleum funds are being managed entirely, by our good selves. So we are building up the capacity, and hopefully, come someday, we can take that action to manage everything from Accra. That is fine, but we shouldn't go away with, the press is here. I don't want somebody to report that we are paying more to them than we are receiving. It's not the fact.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, my next question, and please let me take my question because they say I have 3 minutes. My next question is that by the variance that we've talked about, for which you've given us explanation, I want you, in your own honest assessment, since economic management is done by the twin sisters or twin brothers, fiscal and monetary policies. So in view of your projections that sometimes have a variance of about 700 plus, doesn't it in any way affect fiscal policy decisions? I want you to look at it. And then let me come back to my question so that when you are answering and your answer.
Honorable member, your time.
My time. You said I have 3 minutes. So I've asked my question. He's not going to answer.
You think that the 3 minutes is still 3 minutes?
No,
it's about a minute, then you are gone. That
okay,
reminding.
I will take my minute. Now, the interest on Bank of Ghana, the investment, foreign investment, page 60, is it? Yeah, paragraph 60. I have some investment. Yes, paragraph 60. There is an investment by Afri-Exim Bank. But the paragraph there indicates an increase in foreign reserve as a result of increase in investment in Afri-Exim. Yes, but there is no interest indicating how much we earn from that Afri-Exim. Yes.
Honorable member.
Yes.
Now, if you invest in shares,
yes,
what you get, what you call an interest, is called a dividend.
Yes.
That shows in Schedule 2. If you go to the back of the report, it is there that we received it in February. And this was an issue. It's an issue that came up earlier in this meeting.
Okay.
We used that money to reacquire more shares, and which was recorded subsequently. So it's been dealt with.
Thank you very much. That you are done, Honorable Tinyasi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, looking at the scope of work by the act that establishes the Bank of Ghana, we are now recording only foreign exchange monies that are translated into cedi cash. But candidly, it means for all those who come with foreign exchange, there will be a component that is still kept in foreign currency, and they can deal in the foreign currency to affect price stability and economic indicators in the country. What are you doing about that part which doesn't translate into your cash to widen the scope?
Oh, you mean our reserves?
No, the sums held in the accounts
that we don't purchase. That's what purchase. You mean. Okay, I'll ask Mr. Edu yes, I'll ask Mr. Edu to speak to them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think if you be updated, this same committee, in collaboration with the Auditor General, has requested that going forward, we should now prepare our statement based on the gross receipts, so to speak. In other words, it shouldn't be purchases of foreign exchange alone that should be reported in this statement, but that we should show all inflows and outflows. So that one is being taken care of, and I'm sure by the end of the year, the reports will change in color. So maybe that will address what you are saying. That is those that are not purchased by Bank of Ghana, which is currently not part of what the statement seeks to portray. So your concern will be addressed in subsequent statements.
My second question is on the interest earnings. You are wholly reporting on sums realized, but it will have been an ideal if we get to know the amount that was invested, the percentage interest earning on it, and the end result of it, so that we can look at the accuracy of the figures and find out whether the earnings merit the investment that had been made, especially in assessing maybe if the funds managers who are dealing with. So what are you doing about that?
Mr. Chairman, we are ready to provide that detail. We get detailed reports from the external fund managers, so we'll provide that subsequently.
Mr. Governor, by your analysis, the dividend or the interest that we are earning on those investments compare with the cost of hiring the fund managers?
Very much so.
What do you make out of that? Is there any gain? Substantial gain?
Let me ask Steve again to come in here. Maybe he can clarify it further. I stated earlier that there are benchmarks that we give them. We don't just hand them the money and then say, work with it and come back and tell me a story. No. We dictate, we define the scope, and they have to meet those benchmarks. Otherwise, subsequently, they are taken out. But in no circumstance should it lead to a loss in capital. So there are strict terms that we give them. But I need Steve to come in right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many of the investment portfolios that we manage are what you call bond portfolios. And for bond portfolios, as the honorable member pointed out, the management fees is important. But what we look at is net returns. That is after you have taken into consideration the management fees. And I can't recall any time that we have had negative net returns. In other words, after you have taken into consideration the cost of management, you still make positive returns. But when you are talking about fixed income portfolios, I think you have to talk about it in the context of global financial markets. And most of where we invest are really developed markets. So the return that you get also depends on what is happening in those economies. So it has to be put in context. That's why the Deputy Governor said that we set benchmarks for them, and we evaluate these programs based upon whether they are achieving the desired benchmarks or not. And we also set risk limits for them. So it's not just like we are trying to just earn any return, but these are sovereign funds we are managing for the country. So you have to manage them in the context of a proper risk profile. And I can assure the House, the committee, that that's what we are doing.
And just to also add that it's not just anybody who qualifies to be an external fund manager. There are, you have to be rated. There's a particular, and I think this is the highest. You need to have the highest rating to qualify. So these are very reputable, companies that we work with.
Going forward, therefore, we will request that some element of reporting of this nature is added to some of these things for us to see whether it is feasible for you people to still continue to engage those people. Now, the next thing is the receipts that is surrendered. And I'm looking at page 15, table 3, which moves on to table 16. Page 15, table 3, continuing to page 16. And looking at the percentage surrender, and mandatory surrender, and then voluntarily repatriation, you realize that in most of the cases, the voluntary repatriation is higher than the mandatory surrender and the percentages involved. Is it not prudent for Bank of Ghana to recommend a review of this percentage, the percentage to be surrendered?
Mandatory surrenders.
Yes, because the actual...
Mr. Chairman, it falls back in your bosom. I mean, you do the agreements with these respective companies, and you have the power to review or otherwise. So if that is the decision, I'll leave that to you, to your committee.
We're looking at recommendations because you are dealing directly with that. And you remember the last time we met, there was an indication that you even take cognition of the amount of gold, amount of this, and you have mechanisms of reviewing the realizations and looking at the realizations and the trend over what is being repatriated, exceeding the mandatory. Then the recommendation has to come from you before we, as honorable members, can react on that, because we can't operate in vacuum.
I think that Minerals Commission would be better placed to work with you in this regard. Because remember, even when it has to do with the surrenders, now we are saying they should surrender to the commercial banks, which means that you cannot rely only on us. We also have to look into the returns from the commercial bank to monitor. But I'm sure you can pick it up with the Minerals Commission. They can kickstart the process. But of course, they have our full blessings so long as that will help to ensure that full repatriation or significant repatriation is occurs.
Honourable Member, we can, as a committee, recommend to the House that this is our observation, that the voluntary repatriation is even more than the mandatory surrender. So there could be a recommendation that the Mineral Commission look at these agreements if there's a need to increase the percentages for mandatory surrender. I think we can do that recommendation.
Okay. The other is on the process of the acquisition of the shares. And you rightly said we earned interest and we reinvested in the shares. Dividends, and you reinvested in the shares. On the ordinary and the normal course of action, there should be a process, board approval, this, that, before the acquisition. I want to find out whether behind the figures, the necessary processes through board and the legal issues were really done with before the shares were properly acquired.
And that is so. The chairman of our board is the governor. He sort of gave the go-ahead for that transaction, which the board subsequently was briefed about and ratified. So there wasn't any concern there at all. In any case, Afrexim Bank has been prevailing on us. I was at their AGM last month in Rwanda. Ghana is currently one of the countries that, own very little when it comes to our shares. Our shares it's less than 2% of the total in that institution. And yet, when you look at the benefits that we get, and they've been telling us to increase our shareholding because then we can get more. If you look at Nigeria, for example, they're getting a lot of projects from them just because they have significant shareholding. So that decision was just a first step. That was the least we could do at the time. We didn't have the money to increase our investment. So we said, at least they can take the dividends for now. And while later on, we look at how to increase our shareholding there. So that was done. Thank you.
On the question of sundries and the other exports, I'm requesting that at the next time round, we can have details of them. Because even though they may be miscellaneous, if aggregated, it tends to be a quantum and it can have a negative effect. So all things like sundries, or others like other exports, we can have an appendix to the report indicating which items went into that. Thank you.
Chairman, I think we have the information in the schedules. I'm not very sure. But there's a breakdown of the sundry. 7. Yes, so Schedule 7 will give you a breakdown of sundry. So you still have your answer here. Okay. Yeah, that's page 46, yes. You will see all of them are there. You see the inspection fee, the freight and insurance.
I think that is okay. Honourable Member, your time is up. Honourable can come.
You have the answer here. Thank you.
Honourable can come.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to find out from the governor, the deputy governor. Yeah. Welcome once again.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome once again. He was talking about some monies or some percentage being surrendered to the commercial banks directly. And I just want to find out who instructed that the monies must be surrendered to the commercial bank.
No, it was part of the some foreign exchange measures that we took, that going forward, these can be surrendered directly to the commercial banks. If, however, for any reason there's the need for us to come in, we could come in. Now, when the surrenders are made to the commercial banks have to give us returns, all right, information on what came through them. In any case, if we need to cross-check whether somebody brought their money in, it's easy. All we do is to ask for their bank statements. Then we just follow it. So we can readily tell whether the money got back to Ghana. So it doesn't matter through SWIFT. And so it doesn't matter, whether they surrender directly to the central bank or surrender to the banks. There's a way to still cross-check, all right? And so that framework is still there.
Mr. Chairman, I think if you look at the Chapter 13 of Ghana's Constitution, Chapter 13, I think Article 138B, and Mr. Chairman, I crave your indulgence to read this. I'll say it says the Bank of Ghana be the sole custodian of state funds of Ghana, both in and outside Ghana.
Which article?
The Constitution of Ghana.
Which article?
Article 183. Sorry. I think page 122, Article 183B. That the Bank of Ghana is supposed to be the sole custodian of state funds of Ghana, both in and outside Ghana, and may by notice publish in the Gazette authorize any other person or authority to act as a custodian of that person. Please, did you gazette that then before you give them the instructions? Can you have the...
You mentioned the word state funds. Okay, so that is about state funds. If it's about state funds, it's different. We are talking about private firms, private companies who are doing their normal business. And then the fact that you expect them to bring those export receipts back into Ghana to support the foreign exchange market. Previously, it was mandatory that they should bring it through Bank of Ghana. However, last year we said no. We wanted the foreign exchange markets to be more liquid. We want it to be more developed. Because it's not good that everybody lines up to Bank of Ghana if you need some foreign exchange transaction to be done. We wanted the interbank market, the interbank forex market, to be more liquid and to be more vibrant. So that was why we said you can repatriate through your private banks. The banks have a return they have to submit to us, which gives us information on those flows. We can also quickly, just like the last time we came when we needed to investigate the bauxite issue, we just that afternoon went in, called for the bank statements of the companies involved, and we could track, what is going on. So it's all part of deliberate measures to develop the foreign exchange markets. That's why we are now saying that commercial banks, their surrenders can go through those commercial banks and not necessarily the Bank of Ghana all the time.
Yes, Honorable.
Let's go to page 23. Page 23. I think table 11 about the capital payments. Interest on sovereign bond, interest on 5-year bond, interest on 3-year bond, redemption of government bond. And if you go to the capital receipt in page 16, I just want to find out whether the country or your outfit raise an Eurobond. Is Eurobond part of these figures that we are seeing here?
Mr. Chair, the Eurobond was issued for last year. It was issued in the second half of the year. So we'll see it in the second half report.
So does it mean that the first half, there was nothing like an Eurobond?
Mr. Chairman, like the Deputy Governor earlier explained, the initial projection was that the Eurobond was going to be held in May. So it was part of the first half projections. However, due to other circumstances, it was shifted and then finally came on in the second half of the year. So we wouldn't see the receipt here. We'll see it in the second half report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think without explanation, I rest my case here.
Thank you very much. Honorable Chair Bafo.
Chairman, thank you very much. And, Mr. Governor, do you know it's the responsibility of the governor, your good self, and your team for the effective management and then presentation of the statement of foreign exchange receipts and payments?
I think that the Auditor General has that primary. Yes, we prepare it and we work with the Auditor General for that report to be submitted to you.
No, you prepared, but no, I want you to confirm whether you know it is your sole responsibility. Auditor General and his outfit do not come into this scheme of things here. Do you agree with me?
I agree with you 100%.
Okay, then to what extent that in your answer to the weaknesses identified continue to be identified by the Auditor General? Because I quite remember when last you were here, the issue on the weaknesses of your internal control mechanisms and the lapses in your supervisory roles over the people responsible for collating and putting these figures together got heated more than this. And you make a lot of entreaties and promises and that we're not going to see them here. Yet they appear...
Honorable member, that report has been tabled and taken on the floor, all right.
Okay.
What we have recommended, I do not think that can reflect in this 2016 first quarter report, if anything at all, to be the second half portion. So, if you can amend or polish your question.
Chairman,
yeah.
I just want to, actually, everything else that we discussed here at the previous time we came, we'll see the reflection of the various recommendations in the 2017 report. Because by the time that we came here, even the second half had been prepared and had been audited by the good selves of the Ghana Audit Service. So we'll see some of these things in the 2017 report. Thank you. And then the annualized report as you suggested. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll be guided accordingly as I move on. You know that is your responsibility. So when they finish your job, at least management should append just its signature to this. Did you in this?
Mr. Chairman, our signature is there. What we are saying is that before the report is submitted to this honorable committee, we and Auditor General should work together, to make sure that the interpretations are accurate, to make sure that we don't come here and seem to be speaking different languages. That we'll be doing from here. We are committed. We take this report very, very seriously, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm saying so because if you look at the report that has having been signed, I think it's
page 49.
Page 849. The chief internal, the shadows, if you look at the shadows at the back, we have the people signing, the chief internal auditor, assistant director, treasury department. Then 49, the last shadow, you still have the chief internal auditor. You have the same thing. Please, can you confirm to this committee whether these signatures, those personalities, they are part of top management?
Mr. Chairman, those two personalities from Treasury and then head of internal audit, they have the capacity to execute some of these. and we are binded by whatever they sign on. They have our authority to do so. If, however, the Honorable Committee wants ourselves to sign, there's not a difficulty in that. We can be signing up.
No. That is not how it is. It's the normal. We have a lot of Auditor General's report that comes to us.
Mr. Chairman, what I'm saying is, because this has been the practice, at least when I came in, this is what I've seen. There are other transactions that the bank engages in where, for example, the head of the Secretary's Department signs on behalf of the governor. It's just that we have some of these practices in place. However, if it's the decision from today that from today on it should be signed by ourselves, we don't have a difficulty with that. We will comply. Let's not get the impression that because our heads of department signed, we are not taking it seriously. We do. We stand by what they have signed duly.
Well, let me do a follow. Just a minute. These are schedules. These are schedules to the statement that the bank prepares, and these are the schedules signed by the heads of departments. The statement itself. Who signs the statement itself?
Mr. Chairman, I need to explain a few things. These are the operational aspects of the work. This is the actual compilation. So the head of the financial markets department has an office within that department who compiles this one, because I told you earlier on that it's from various parts of the bank and it's compiled into data. After that, my department, internal audit, also goes through them and we ratify them. When all this is done, it is discussed with management, and we seek management's ratification or confirmation, and then the secretary to the bank, who is the spokesperson of the governor, so to speak, signs a cover letter onto this, and that is how it is submitted to the Auditor General. So these are the processes. So it means that it reached the highest level of attention, because before the secretary appends his signature to that covering letter, he would have discussed with the governors, or the governor's consent would have been sorted before it is done. So it is not, the cover letter is not part of this report, but there's a cover letter. If you realize the responses that were provided, it's under the signature of the secretary, if you have your copies. It didn't come under the signature of the chief internal auditor, because we were responding to the highest, leadership of the parliament.
So it can be explained that the statement of foreign exchange receipts and payment is actually signed by the secretary.
Exactly.
So that should be the position. We shouldn't take the signature on these various schedules as the authorized signature per se. But if you talk about the statement in whole, it is the secretary to. Please use a mic.
It's the audit service will attest to the fact that when we are submitting, it's under the signature of the secretary to the bank. They are here if they can.
Let me find out from the audit service. Are you okay and accept the authorized signature on the statement that you audit before you come up with these reports?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, like Mr. Edu rightly said, the statements are transmitted under the signature of the secretary to the bank. But accounting practice requires that top management who owns the statement should sign the statement.
Who is top management?
No, I've not allowed you to speak. Did you communicate this to them, that you prefer a top management owning the statement of foreign exchange receipts and payment for which you are auditing? Have you communicated this to them?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This issue came up on the floor of this committee, and so we are yet to.
Oh, you are now telling us that it should have been owned by a top management. And I'm asking you that as auditor, did you communicate that information to them that the secretary to the board signing, you are not okay with that? You want somebody else to sign. Have you done that? That is my question.
Mr. Chairman, we haven't done that.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, given that the secretary to the board actually signs most of our agreements and is binding, this is the practice. So do we want to change
so
that?
let me find out from the bank. Who is the authorized person who signs all communications from the bank?
The secretary to the board.
That's all.
The secretary to the board.
Honorable Cheba, for continuing.
Chairman, I think my time has all been taken. So this one, a special appeal to you too.
I've taken account of what
yes, sir.
we have spent, so we'll credit you.
Thank you. Chairman, moving away from that, but then, Mr. Chairman, I'll beg of you, if you were in our shoes, Auditor General's board comes here, and they are commenting, still commenting, every day commenting about the weaknesses in your structure, then sit up and look at it.
Mr. Chairman, I think we've explained this time and again that we don't have lapses in internal controls. Probably going forward, the Auditor General's report should be more precise. I really don't see the issue that we see which might be a problem, as they said, was that because they were dealing with different, departments, etc. We have to make sure that information flow is timely. However, if the issue about the board secretary signing the communication, etc., I'm not sure if that is supervisory lapse they are referring to. There is no such thing. Maybe we should call it a different name. So rest assured, there isn't anything as such that is being highlighted we're still not correcting. If it is about the processes before the report gets to the honorable committee, make sure that issues are dealt with, speak one language, that I agree with. We'll address it going forward. But let's not get away with a supervisory, lack of supervisory control. That, I beg of you, there isn't any such weakness. If there's anything of the sort, I would like to have more details, sir.
Chairman, I will move away from this one. Let's turn to page, Chairman, with your indulgence, let's turn to page 32 of the reports under review. Mr. Governor and your team, my interest is in the area of we are looking at Bank of Ghana Reserve Assets position. If you look at, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the table, the last but one item, investment in JIB London. I don't understand it. Can you explain a bit further? Then I can follow up. The investment, I want the extent of, I know it's Ghana International Bank, but I want to see what kind of investment are we talking about.
Yeah, the Ghana International Bank is one of our banks that we may place some deposits and short-term call accounts with them. So they are one of the banks that we use for such investments. So they are a counterparty that we may place such investment, but usually they are for very short term.
Chairman, if you look at the analysis, trend analysis from 2004, then 2005, then this half year 2006, it keeps reducing. What is the import of that? How do you explain that?
You mean the GIB portfolio?
Yes.
Yeah, it's part of our risk management strategies. GIB, we partly own GIB, right? There is a school of thought that you partly own something and you also invest there, so you have to kind of manage that carefully. You can't have too much exposure
GIB. Like the Deputy Governor also mentioned, we have to look at the credit rating and credit quality when we do investments. And the GIB's rating is derived from Ghana's rating. So technically, we don't want to invest too much in GIB. So those are some of the factors that goes into how much we allocate to a counterparty like GIB. And it can change. These are short-term placements, so they can change even within the year. Thank you.
Honorable Member, you have 1 minute.
Chairman, thank you. Please, I will take you to embassy transfers. Rather, help me read the page. Embassy transfer. Page 29. Yes, thank you very much. 2029. I have just 1 minute. I want to be clear about certain things. If you look at London and Tehran, the payments we make to those embassies, is it, I don't know, when you lump them together like this, what are you trying to explain to us? Is it that one single check were issued in place of the two embassies, or it went to London for transmission to Tehran, or or vice versa?
Mr. Chairman, it is the case that Tehran, for example, doesn't go directly. It goes through London. So that's why you may have some of these in place. And again, let me emphasize what I said earlier, that the relevant MDA can give you details on all these. So let me plead with you.
I think that was even explained the last time.
Yes.
That because Tehran transfer do not go directly to them, it's routed through London.
Through London.
Honorable, your time is up.
Yes.
Honorable Mills.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, there was an answer given that I really didn't get the answer. Let's look at page 17, paragraph 35. Yes, the Bank of Ghana projections. And the reason why I'm going back to this is the last sitting, I had issues with projections from Bank of Ghana. Now, after the auditor's report, does Bank of Ghana get a copy of the draft?
You mean before the report gets to?
Yes.
Yes, we do get a copy of the draft. Yes.
So when you got the copy of the draft, did you see this mistake? Because the governor is saying that it was the attorney, Auditor General, that put some numbers together. Did anybody at the bank at that time realize there was a mistake before this one was published?
The Chairman, I think we have addressed this issue earlier on, but the summary of it is that we have said that these projections, some of them we cannot associate with it because we realize that there are some of them that have not been included. That was...
So my question was, when you saw the draft,
yeah, so I'm coming to
that some of these had not been added to it, did we draw the Auditor General's attention to it?
That's why I said we have had. So what we are saying is that going forward, we are going to own this document more because when they are brought, most of the time it's at the last minute and we look at the authentication and the management issues. But we are saying that going forward, we are going to do further analysis to what they submit, not just looking at it ordinarily. And that is, I think, that's what we have submitted before this House, yes.
Because, Mr. Chairman, the answer that we got, it gave the impression that is the Auditor General putting some numbers together, and maybe they couldn't be bothered about looking at the details. Look, these reports are not just read by us. They are read by quite a lot of people. And perceptions speak louder than the reality. Because the last time that we were here, I was questioning about projections in what I think it was manganese. We said we're going to make 50-something million, and then we actually made just 9 million. If you look at projections over here, let's go to paragraph 57. On page 31, you talk about your projections. So the question I ask again is this. I mean, that difference over there is not that much. It's only 927 million Ghana cedis of difference over there. That is not that much. There's this chicken change. So my question is, the bank and with projections, I'm a little bit confused. I don't know where this is coming from, but I think the perception that I get is we can't be bothered.
Mr. Chairman, please, let's not go that far. I said earlier that the issue about projections, let's not generalize it. Let's take it one by one. Because if you just generalize it by the numbers you say, you draw very wrong conclusions. Talking about manganese, for example, I'm told what happened during the year was their projections sort of had to be changed due to two things. They had difficulty with energy and then also some haulage challenges that they had. And so our people were on them, to revise those projections. However, the final revised projection they got was well after this audit exercise, ended. And when it comes to the foreign exchange receipt side, I mentioned, for example, the Eurobond, which we projected to be part of the first half receipts. This was to come in May. This report ended in June. Now, by the time we were sure that it won't be part of the January to June numbers, the half year had already ended. So then you didn't have room to readjust the projection for the lack of the Eurobond, etc. So it's case by case basis. And that is why, Honorable Member, I'm assuring you that going forward, the way out now is for we and the Auditor General to work more, to collaborate more, even beyond the time for the exercise. Then we can give them some of these feedbacks so they can alter, change some of the wordings in their report. I want to, strictly say that don't get away with the conclusion that we can't be bothered. We have a mandate. We take that mandate very, very seriously. But as any institution, and I'm sure with Parliament itself, there are times when you have certain, don't call it a lapse, areas that you need to emphasize more as an institution. And I said going forward, we'll strengthen that part to address it.
Sir, I realize that everybody could use some improvement, but sometimes it's the answers that you give that give the impression, right or wrong. Let's look at page 16, please. The issue with Newmont, where the amount that they were supposed to surrender. And the reason why I'm going back to this is there was an agreement that was, you said the bank was not aware of the agreement when it was changed. And it shows over there what they are supposed to surrender is zero. We know that this is wrong. So in future, if there's a change in an agreement like that, how should the bank be notified, or how would the bank know that an agreement like that has been changed? When it comes to surrender,
Minerals Commission is the one that coordinates all these together with Parliament. Now, until Minerals Commission, and we can pick this from newspapers, if Minerals Commission concludes those arrangements and writes to us, we are notified. And then also adds a copy of the new agreements. Then we can now work with that officially. That's what we said.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I yield back the rest of my time.
Are you done? Thank you very much, Honorable Afenyo Markins. Afenyo Markin, not Markins. Use this one.
Mr. Chairman, the Bank of Ghana indicated that their prime object is to ensure price stability. And some other responsibilities has compelled them to outsource some of their activities. May I know whether this is being done with due regard to the principal enactment and its later amendments?
Specifically, sir.
Your principal enactment?
Yes.
And
I mean, which activities have we outsourced? I want to be...
No, you didn't say so. You didn't specify. You said you're true. Ms. Opat, Mr.
Steve
Opata.
Yes, Steve.
In an earlier submission by him, he said that your prime object is price stability. However, there are some other responsibilities, and you can't manage them on your own.
It is, Mr. Chairman, maybe.
This is the Joy News channel, and I'm Bernice Abu-Baidu. Those were live views from Parliament because the Bank of Ghana officials have been responding to some questions, and they appeared before Parliament's Appointments Committee earlier today. Apologies, we have to end that particular broadcast and bring you sports today with Nathaniel Atto.